Welcome back to some new r/malicious compliance stories, where people comply to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. I hope you had a great day. The first story is called Transfer Me. During the summer of 2020, I worked in customer service for an online retailer. It is the worst job I've ever worked. While most people were polite, kind and understanding, I had to deal with many people who were, often justifiably, upset about a problem with their order. But even then, most people would be sure to say their anger was not directed towards me. Taking sympathy for these people was hard enough. But then there would be people berating me personally, as if I had something to do with whatever problem they were complaining about. One day, the system we used to track people's orders was down. I wouldn't be able to cancel orders, check when the shipping date was, change the shipping address, nothing. The supervisor told us to tell the customers to call back in an hour, at which point the system would hopefully be back up. Again, most people understood that there was literally nothing I could do to modify their orders, and said they would call back later. This one lady calls me and is upset about something and wants me to cancel her order. I told her I apologize for the inconvenience, but I can't at the moment, and that she should call back in an hour. She was not happy with the response. She starts going off about how that is unacceptable. She doesn't have time later. Take down her information and do it later, once the system is back up. This is horrible customer service, etc. I constantly have calls coming in, so I can't be dealing with her problem at the same time as speaking to another customer. And more importantly, my shift was going to be finished in 20 minutes, and I sure wasn't waiting around for the system to be back up and doing overtime to cancel this lady's order, especially with her rude, entitled attitude. Eventually, she decides that she has had enough of me and asks to speak with my supervisor. This was in the summer of 2020, so I was working from home. I explained the situation and told her I can't just pass the phone to my supervisor, but what I can do is escalate the issue by putting in a ticket, and the supervisor will call them back in 24 to 48 hours. Of course, this is not good enough for her. She is yelling at me at this point, going on and on about how awful this customer service is, and she is not accepting that there's nothing I can do at the moment. She decides she doesn't want to speak to me anymore and screeches at me, "Just transfer me to anyone else. I don't care. I don't want to speak to you anymore." I say okay, just give me a moment. I'm thinking, you did say anyone, so I transferred her to the Spanish customer service line. The next story is called Senior Worker. A long time ago, I worked, eventually, in a warehouse for a major TV manufacturer. I was aided, in no way, shape or form, by a woman who, whilst having the same job as me, just sat and stared into the middle distance. I was young and didn't want to rock the boat, so I just got on with it. Early on, a manager stopped me to ask something. I helped and they went away happy. I got hissed orders from her that any managers should be directed to her. Sure. So one day, a major mess happened, and the delivery of required boards didn't arrive, and the line ground to a halt. The manager arrives, desperate for a miracle, and she sadly shrugs and says there's nothing to be done. "You've checked the logs? We don't have any of these in stock at all." Now, she didn't know squat, and only had a cursory look at the bay logs, and confirmed that there were no boards of that type. The manager stomps away frustrated. Then, a higher-up manager comes an hour later and asks me, and before I can get 5 words out, she pipes up from her corner and calls the manager over. He stomps away frustrated. The factory is losing thousands every hour. I stop him as he passes and explain that while we don't have the board, 2 smaller component boards combine to make that board. Orders me to get the pallet truck and get the lines going. The previous manager comes around and asks why I didn't say this earlier, and I explained I was ordered to direct all questions to the senior worker. The end result was that the factory got going. Hundreds of thousands of pounds were saved. I got a gift card, and she got the boot, as they finally noticed that she was incompetent. The third story is called Not Acceptable. I I was sitting in my office one slow day, and the CEO walked in, which is always a puker moment, even though I'm on very good terms with him. He handed me an, obviously non-business laptop, and asked if I could get it back up and running, as it had very important things on it that was needed shortly. As I wasn't doing anything and he still signed my paycheck, I said, "You got it, sir." Later, a middle mangler came in and asked me to do something, and I say, "You are number 2 in line," and pointed to the obviously not corporate laptop I was fixing. Mangler didn't like that and demanded I call whoever and tell them that it wasn't acceptable for me to be working on personal equipment. So I pulled out my cell and called. Mangler could only hear my half of the conversation, but what he heard was something like, "Hey Tom, I got Bob here, telling me it isn't acceptable for me to be working on your personal stuff, and he wanted me to call you and tell you." "Oh sure, he's right here. Hang on." And I handed the phone to the mangler. Mangler started off saying, "It's not acceptable," and then his eyes got really big, and the rest of the conversation was, "Yes sir," and "No sir." He hung up and thundered, "Why didn't you tell me it was the CEO's laptop? You didn't give me a chance," and demanded I call them right now. The last story is called Get Rid of It. This took place where I work at a funeral home. We had several sets of straps for our lowering device. Orders came from one of the managers to get rid of all the sets we had, as new ones were coming in. I tried to protest that the new ones had arrived and were already in rotation, but was ignored. "Gather up all the straps and get rid of them." "Sir?" "Yes sir." Initially I was instructed to throw them out, but I asked to keep them instead. I was told that they had to leave the premises, one way or the other, so I took them and gave them to a friend of mine for safekeeping. A month later, I had that same manager come up to me, asking how many sets of straps we have. I replied with none. He asked about the new ones that had come in. I informed him that they left the premises a month prior, as per his instructions. He flies into a panic and is about to berate me for throwing them out when I tell him to relax. I can bring them back in. Bring them back in the next day. No harm and no foul. It certainly bruised that manager's ego a bit and made him think about what he said next time though. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please don't forget to leave a like, comment and subscribe. And if you have time, watch another one of my videos. And now, I hope you have a great day. See you soon. Bye bye.